His voice was a low rumble against my ear, a sinful promise whispered in the dark. Yes, he breathed, the single word a testament to the hard ridge pressing against my thigh. And I want it inside of you. The world tilted on its axis, a dizzying spiral of disbelief and a desperate, burning want. This was Min-jae, my brother's best friend. The one my brother, Hyeon, swore up and down was completely, unequivocally straight. And in that moment, as his breath ghosted over my skin, I had to wonder if this was all some elaborate, cruel trick designed to shatter me completely. My name is June, and my life, up until that point, had been a masterclass in invisibility. I wasn't built for the spotlight. I was the quiet corner of the library, the reflection in the window that no one ever really sees. My existence was a symphony of hushed apologies and awkward silences, a collection of desires so profound they were buried deep beneath layers of academic textbooks and self-doubt. When the acceptance letter from the University of Seoul arrived, a fragile hope flickered within me. It wasn't just about the prestige or the literature program I dreamed of. It was about the city, a sprawling metropolis of millions where, I prayed, I could finally shed my old skin. I imagined a new version of myself, confident, articulate, someone who could walk into a room and not immediately wish to merge with the wallpaper. That fantasy, like most of my dreams, dissolved almost instantly. The university was just a bigger high school with taller buildings and more sophisticated methods of cruelty. I remained the same June. The boy with the round, perpetually sliding glasses, the one whose notes were color-coded to perfection but who could never master the art of casual conversation. I became a ghost in the hallways, a footnote in the grand narrative of campus life. People saw me, but they didn't see me. They saw a label, a stereotype. I could feel their eyes on me as I passed, their laughter a little too sharp, their whispers like tiny, venomous darts. That's him, isn't it? The gay one. Yeah, I heard he just stares at guys in the locker room. They weren't entirely wrong, of course, but the truth, when wielded like a weapon, still draws blood. Each word was another stone added to the wall I was building around my heart. So, when my older brother Hyeon, already a graduate student with a part-time gig at a prestigious architecture firm, offered me his spare room, I clung to the offer like a lifeline. His apartment, a mere stone's throw from the campus that felt miles away emotionally, became my sanctuary. It was immaculate, quiet, and most importantly, it was a place where I could breathe without feeling the weight of 1,000 judging eyes. Our lives ran on parallel tracks. He was busy with blueprints and deadlines. I was lost in 19th century novels. We coexisted peacefully, our paths crossing for shared dinners or lazy weekend mornings. It was a manageable, predictable existence. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, the universe decided to detonate a bomb in the middle of my quiet life, and that bomb's name was Min-jae. I was curled on the sofa, lost in the world of Dostoevsky, when the front door flew open with a force that rattled the picture frames on the wall. Hyeon stumbled in, laughing breathlessly, his arms laden with grocery bags, and trailing behind him was a vision. He was an entire weather system in human form, taller than my brother, with a storm cloud of artfully messy ash-brown hair. His shoulders were broad, stretching the fabric of his simple white t-shirt, and from beneath one sleeve, the intricate lines of a tattoo snaked out, a dark promise of stories I couldn't begin to imagine. He didn't look like a student. He looked like he'd just stepped off the runway, or more accurately, out of the pages of one of those dramatic webtoons about the campus heartbreaker who ruins lives for sport. June, my man, meet Min-jae, Hyan announced, dropping the bags onto the kitchen counter. He's my best friend. His new lease fell through, so he's gonna be our third musketeer for a little while. I just blinked, my brain struggling to reboot. I tried to arrange my face into something resembling a normal human expression, nodding dumbly as I fought the urge to stare. Min-jae's eyes found mine. "Hey," he said, and the sound of his voice, a deep and resonant timbre, vibrated through me. A slow, lazy grin spread across his face, and his gaze held mine for a fraction of a second too long. A silent challenge that sent a jolt straight to my core. "Hi" was the pathetic squeak that escaped my lips. He stepped forward, closing the space between us, and extended a hand. His grip was firm, his skin radiating a warmth that traveled up my arm and settled in my chest. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur meant only for me. "You're cute," he said. My heart stopped. My blood turned to fire. Was he serious? Was this some kind of joke? Couldn't tell. The universe's cruel joke took on a new dimension that very night. "Don't worry," Hyan had said, "he can crash on the couch." But the couch, as Min-jae dramatically pointed out, was a relic from the Joseon dynasty designed for posture, not sleep. And since Hyan's room was a sacred temple of architectural models and blueprints, the only other option was my room. My bed. My sanctuary. "I promise I'll behave," Min-jae had said with a wink that felt less like a promise and more like a threat. I found myself wishing, desperately, that he wouldn't. He tossed his duffel bag onto the floor and peeled off his hoodie in one fluid motion. Beneath it, a loose white tank top did a poor job of concealing a canvas of perfectly sculpted abdominal muscles. I quickly buried my nose back in my book, pretending to be utterly absorbed by the prose, but my eyes were traitors. They darted up, they lingered, they burned the image of him into my memory. A furious blush crept up my neck, a betraying heat that I prayed the dim lamplight would hide. The nights that followed were a special kind of exquisite torture. My small room, once my safe haven, became a crucible. Min-jae seemed completely oblivious to the effect he had on me, or worse, he was completely aware and reveled in it. He would emerge from the bathroom, a cloud of steam and soap-scented air following him, with a towel slung so precariously low on his hips it defied gravity. One evening, as he bent over to grab something from his bag, I caught a full, unadulterated reflection of his bare backside in my wardrobe mirror. I nearly flung my laptop across the room. He never acknowledged my flustered reactions, my sharp intakes of breath, or the way I suddenly found the ceiling intensely fascinating whenever he was shirtless. But his actions felt deliberate. The way he would stretch in the morning, arching his back so his shirt would ride up. The way he'd lean over my shoulder to look at something on my screen, his chest brushing against my back, his clean scent filling my senses. The way his hand, when we sat on the sofa watching movies, would rest on my thigh, lingering for a heartbeat longer than what was socially acceptable between two straight guys. Was he toying with me? Did he see the desperate longing in my eyes and find it amusing? One night, the invisible line was crossed. I was in bed, cocooned in my blankets, earphones in, feigning sleep as I listened to a sad playlist. He stepped out of the shower, water droplets glistening on his shoulders and chest, the towel a mere suggestion around his waist. My body reacted instantly, a primal, uncontrollable pull in my gut. He ran the towel through his hair, shaking his head like a dog, and then he paused, standing directly in front of me. "You always read before you go to sleep?" he asked, his voice soft in the quiet room. I swallowed a lump in my throat. Yeah, I managed. Helps me wind down. He took a step closer. You know, he said, his tone laced with a strange amusement, you make these little noises when you sleep. Like whimpers. My head snapped up, my eyes wide with horror. What? A low chuckle escaped his lips. It's cute. Must be dreaming of someone special. He didn't wait for an answer. He just smiled that devastating smile and turned away, leaving me to combust in silence. I slammed my face into my pillow, a silent scream of frustration and humiliation trapped in my throat. He knew. He had to know. Weeks bled into a month, and his subtle campaign of torment continued. His fingers would accidentally graze mine when he passed me a bowl of popcorn. I woke up one morning to find his arm thrown over my waist, his body spooned against my back. For a blissful moment, I allowed myself to believe it was a dream, but the solid warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing against my neck, was undeniably real. I was falling, tumbling head over heels into a dangerous, intoxicating obsession. I couldn't live in the ambiguity any longer. I had to know. I decided to confess. For an entire afternoon, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, practicing the words, my reflection staring back at me with pitiful, terrified eyes. Min-jae, I like you. Too simple. I can't stop thinking about you. Too desperate. I was wondering if maybe you felt something too? Pathetic. That evening, I took a deep breath, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, and walked out of my room, ready to lay my soul bare. But Hyun was in the kitchen, his expression unusually grim. He put down his mug and looked at me, his eyes serious. June, we need to talk. My blood ran cold. Listen, don't get any weird ideas about Min-jae. He's not like that. Okay. He's straight. I just don't want things to get awkward in our own home. The floor disappeared from beneath my feet. The air in my lungs turned to lead. The carefully constructed speech, the fragile bubble of hope I had nurtured for weeks, shattered into a million pieces. I stammered, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. I know. It's fine. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt like my face was cracking. I swallowed the jagged shards of my heartbreak and retreated. That night, I built my wall higher than ever, and I made sure Min-jae couldn't see over it. For a full week, I was a ghost to him, avoiding his gaze, offering one-word answers, and making sure I was asleep before he even came into the room. And then, just as I had resigned myself to a life of quiet pining, everything shifted. I had stayed late at the library, burying myself in research to avoid the apartment. When I finally got home, the living room was dark. I tiptoed into our room to find Min-jae already in bed, a sliver of moonlight illuminating his form under the blankets. I undressed in the dark, my movements silent and practiced. As I slipped under my own covers, trying to maintain a chasm of space between us, I felt him stir. A hand slid beneath my blanket. It was not my own. Min-jae? I whispered, my voice trembling. He didn't respond with words. Instead, he shifted closer, his body a furnace of heat against my back. The hand, confident and sure, moved with a purpose that stole my breath. It found me through the thin fabric of my boxers. I gasped, a sound of pure shock and illicit pleasure. Shoo, he whispered, his lips brushing against the shell of my ear, sending shivers cascading down my spine. I want you tonight. I turned to face him, my mind reeling. In the dim light, his face was a mask of shadows and raw hunger, his eyes dark pools of undisguised desire. "But you're not gay," I choked out, the words tasting like a final, desperate plea for clarity. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I never said that." And then his mouth was on mine, and the world dissolved into nothing but the desperate, frantic press of his kiss. That single night cracked open a new reality. Our world shrank to the confines of my small bedroom, a universe built on whispered secrets and stolen touches. We became masters of deception, communicating in silent glances across the dinner table while Hyen blissfully watched sports highlights. Our nights were a flurry of muffled moans into pillows, hidden kisses under the shield of darkness, and the addictive, dangerous exploration of each other's bodies. He was mine in the dark. I was his when the world was asleep. And for the first time in my life, something felt breathtakingly, terrifyingly real. The secrecy, however, was a double-edged sword. It was thrilling, but it was also a constant, low-level hum of anxiety. We pushed our luck, growing bolder with each passing day. There were near misses that left my heart pounding. Laughing too loudly at an inside joke. Him pulling me onto his lap for a split second during a video game. Our hands finding each other under a pile of textbooks on the coffee table. Our bodies had become fluent in a language our voices couldn't yet speak. Our hearts were desperately trying to catch up. One afternoon, while Hyen was in the shower, Min-jae cornered me in the kitchen. He backed me up against the cold metal of the refrigerator and kissed me with a hunger that left me breathless. "I want to tell him," I whispered against his lips, the words a confession of my own. "Not yet," he murmured, his mouth moving to my neck, his kisses sending sparks across my skin. "Just give it a little more time." But secrets have a shelf life, and ours was about to expire. Hyen came home early one evening, expecting to find an empty apartment. Instead, he walked in on a scene straight out of a romance novel. I was sitting on Min-jae's lap on the sofa, my shirt half unbuttoned, his hands roaming freely underneath it. The click of the door latch was like a gunshot in the silent room. Everything froze. The air crackled with tension. Hyen stood in the doorway, his keys dangling from his hand, his face an unreadable mask of shock. Min-jae didn't move. I was paralyzed, trapped in the spotlight of my brother's stunned gaze. An eternity seemed to pass before Hyen finally spoke, his voice quiet and strained. "So, it's true." Silence. It was a suffocating, heavy blanket. You really like each other?" he asked, his eyes flickering between me and Min-jae. I could only manage a small, terrified nod. Hyen let out a long, slow breath, running a hand over his face. He looked at the ceiling, then back at us. "Okay," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He cleared his throat. "Okay, just don't do it on my bed." It wasn't the dramatic confrontation I had feared, nor the fairy tale acceptance I had secretly hoped for. It was something in between, messy, awkward, and profoundly real. It was a quiet acknowledgement of a love that had been blooming under his own roof, a love that was secret and complicated and beautiful. We still shared the same room, playing the part of roommates by day and becoming lovers by night. But now a little bit of the weight had been lifted, and slowly, painstakingly, the fear of the world outside our door began to matter just a little bit less. Waking up the morning after our first night together was a study in fragile hope. The first thing I registered was the sound of seagulls crying outside the window. The second was the solid, warm weight of Min-jae's arm draped possessively around my waist. I lay perfectly still, holding my breath, terrified that the slightest movement would shatter the dream. But the scent of him was real. The slight roughness of his morning stubble against my neck was real. "Morning," he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep, his breath a warm tickle against my ear. "You stayed," was all I could whisper back, the words laced with a profound sense of wonder. He responded by tightening his hold, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. "I never wanted to leave," he confessed. My heart did a frantic, joyful dance against my ribs. We were a tangle of limbs beneath the sheets, our legs intertwined, his fingers tracing lazy, hypnotic circles on my hip. We hadn't talked about what it meant, what we were, or where this was going. But the silence that stretched between us was not the awkward, suffocating kind I was used to. It was a comfortable, knowing silence, filled with the unspoken understanding that something fundamental had shifted. Still, a traitorous part of my mind worried. Would he wake up fully and be filled with regret? Would I? When we finally emerged from the room, Hyan was at the stove, the smell of sizzling eggs filling the small apartment. I immediately went into self-preservation mode, trying to act as normal and invisible as possible. Min-jae, on the other hand, seemed to have no such inhibitions. He casually slung his arm over my shoulders, leaning down to whisper something utterly nonsensical in my ear that made me blush a shade of crimson I didn't know I was capable of. Hyan glanced over his shoulder, his eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly as he took in the scene. "You guys good?" he asked, his attention seemingly focused on flipping the eggs. "Yeah," Min-jae answered without a flicker of hesitation, his voice bright and clear. "Great, actually." Hyan said nothing more, but the air was thick with questions he wasn't asking. As we sat down to eat, my hand trembled so much I could barely hold my fork. Min-jae, as audacious as ever, reached under the table and gave my thigh a firm, reassuring squeeze. "Eat, baby," he murmured, the endearment so casual and yet so potent that I promptly choked on my orange juice. That week was a dizzying whirlwind of stolen moments. We kissed behind the closed door of our room, our hands exploring beneath the sheets at night. I found myself memorizing the geography of him, the exact sound of his laugh when it was genuine, the way his lips tasted of coffee in the morning, the small, pale scar just above his collarbone that I developed a fondness for kissing. Every night, he would slip into my bed, and our small mattress would become our own private island. Sometimes we would stay awake for hours, whispering about everything and nothing. Other times we would simply hold each other, no words needed. One afternoon, I came home from a canceled lecture to find the apartment empty, save for Min-jae. He was sprawled on the couch, shirtless, completely engrossed in some fantasy RPG on his phone. The moment he spotted me, he tossed his phone onto the cushion beside him. "Alone at last," he declared with the flair of a seasoned actor. I couldn't help but laugh, kicking off my sneakers. "Are you always this dramatic?" Before I could take another step, he reached out and pulled me down onto his lap. I let out a surprised gasp as he buried his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. "You smell like old books and coffee," he mumbled against my skin. "And you smell like trouble," I retorted, my voice breathier than I intended. "Only for you," he whispered, and then his mouth found mine. We kissed on that sofa like we were starving, like we were teenagers who might get caught at any second. It was messy and hot and desperate. His hands were under my shirt, tracing patterns on my skin, while my fingers were hopelessly tangled in his soft hair. He kissed me with an urgency that sent my senses into overdrive, and I moaned into his mouth as he rocked his hips against mine, a friction that promised so much more. God, June, he groaned, his lips leaving mine to trail a path of fire down my throat. You drive me absolutely insane. His hands began to slide under the waistband of my jeans, and just as my world was about to go supernova, the unmistakable click of the front door lock echoed through the apartment. We froze, two statues in a compromising tableau. Hyen stepped inside. In a feat of superhuman speed, Min-jae launched me off his lap. I landed on the floor with a startled yelp. He shot to his feet, running a hand through his hair and trying to look casual. Hey bro, you're home early. Hyen's eyes narrowed, taking in the scene with the precision of an architect analyzing a flawed design. You're half naked, he observed, pointing at Min-jae. And he said, gesturing to me, is as red as a tomato. What the hell is going on here? I was convinced the floor was about to open up and swallow me whole. We were just watching a movie. I lied, the words tumbling out in a panicked rush. Hyen stared at us for a long, silent moment, his expression unreadable. Then he let out a heavy sigh, a sound of pure exasperation. Just use protection. And with that, he turned and walked to his room, closing the door behind him. Later that night, I sought refuge on the small balcony, pulling my knees to my chest and wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. The cool night air was a welcome balm against my flushed skin and chaotic thoughts. After a few minutes, the sliding door opened and closed softly. Min-jae sat down beside me, leaving a small space between us. We sat in silence for a long time, watching the city lights twinkle below. I don't want to hide anymore, I finally whispered into the darkness, the confession raw and painful. He stared straight ahead, his profile etched against the night sky. We don't have to, he said after a long pause. He turned to me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. But I'm not good at this, June. At what? At being someone's person, he admitted, his voice low. I've never really dated anyone. Never cared enough to try. Not until you. I looked at him, truly looked at him. Beneath the confident swagger and the bad boy smirk was someone just as lost as I was. Then try, I said softly, my voice barely audible. I am, he replied, his gaze intense. He reached across the space between us and took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. Every single second I'm with you, I am. Campus life didn't magically transform overnight. I was still the quiet kid who sat alone in lectures. The whispers still followed me down the hallways, but they had lost their sting. I wasn't truly alone anymore. I had Min-jae waiting for me at home. I had someone who saw past the labels, past the assumptions, and saw just me. One sunny afternoon, I was reading under a canopy of cherry blossoms when a body dropped onto the grass beside me. You didn't text me back? Min-jae pouted, nudging my shoulder. You sent me 50 TikToks of cats wearing sweaters. Not a single one of them was funny. I'm wounded, he declared dramatically. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a seductive whisper. Let me kiss you. Here? People will see. I hissed, my eyes darting around nervously. Let them, he said. And he did. Right there, under a gentle shower of pink petals, with the world as his audience, he kissed me. It wasn't a desperate, hidden kiss. It was slow and sweet and defiant, a public declaration that I was his. Things weren't a fairy tale. We fought. He would get possessive when a guy from my literature class texted me too often about notes. I would get furious when he let girls from the drama club hang all over him in the cafeteria. They don't mean anything to me, he would insist. Then why do you let them touch you like that? I'd shoot back. You don't own me. He'd yell. You said you were mine. I'd cry. The fights were explosive and fiery, but the making up was always 1,000 times more intense. Our physical intimacy deepened, evolving from frantic, secret encounters to something more profound. At first, he was a gentle explorer, mapping every inch of my skin with his lips and fingers, learning every gasp and moan that escaped my lips. His kisses were poetry. His touch wrote verses on my back. But sometimes his carefully controlled passion would break its leash. Ride me, he commanded one night, his voice rough with a raw, primal need. I want to see your face when you come. And I obeyed, trembling as I moved above him. We were lost in each other for hours, his hands gripping my hips, mine braced against his sweat-slicked chest. When I finally collapsed on top of him, a depleted, shuddering mess of satisfaction and emotion, he held me tight and whispered 3 words into my hair. I love you. I froze, my body going rigid against his. What? He tilted my chin up, forcing me to look at him. His eyes were clear, his expression deadly serious. I love you, June. I stared at him, my heart feeling like it was about to burst. And then I kissed him. A kiss filled with all the words I couldn't say. A kiss that went on until neither of us could breathe. The truth, once spoken between us, began to seep out into our lives. Hyan officially found out when he walked in on us a second time. This time we were on the kitchen counter. He just groaned, covering his eyes with his hand. You two really can't keep it in your pants, can you? We laughed. A nervous, giddy sound. He peeked through his fingers. I'm happy for you guys, he finally admitted. But for the love of all that is holy, get a hotel room once in a while. We started to live like a real couple. We went on actual dates to hole-in-the-wall restaurants. We took secret photos on our phones. We held hands inside the pockets of our jackets on cold days and snuck kisses in empty lecture halls. He started making coffee for me in the mornings, just the way I liked it. I never imagined I would be the kind of person someone like Min-jae, someone so vibrant and alive, would ever love. But he did. He proved it to me every single day. One lazy Sunday, I drifted off to sleep on the couch while reading. I was woken by the gentle brush of a hand against my cheek. I opened my eyes to find Min-jae crouched beside me, his expression soft and serious. I want to move in with you, he said quietly. For real this time. Not just because my lease fell through. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep beside you every night. I want to grow with you. You already do all of that, I pointed out, a sleepy smile on my face. Yeah, he said, his thumb stroking my cheek. But this time, no more secrets. I smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. Okay, I said, move in. Our life wasn't perfect. It was never going to be, but it was ours. Under the very same roof where I once felt so utterly invisible, I had become someone's entire world. He was the one who held me when my insecurities got the best of me, the one who laughed at my terrible jokes, the one who kissed my forehead every single night before we fell asleep. He was my person, and I was his, and in our small, chaotic apartment, that was all that mattered.